All right, everybody. It's time again for the SMC Journal podcast. This is a show where we talk about software engineering and IT today, and we talk a lot about performance and observability and testing, tuning, AI, DevOps, and security, which is what we're going to talk about today. I'm Scott Moore, your host. Thank you for being with me today. I'm going to be talking a lot more about security this year on the podcast, mainly for two reasons. Number one, there's a big parallel between security and what security testers do versus performance engineers and what we do. Some of the tools that we use the same underlying methods and technologies to get our work done. The other reason why I want to talk about it is because I'm announcing a new sponsor today, which is Saltworks Security, and I want to tell you a little bit about them today. Saltworks Security has been around actually for about 10 years, and they've been delivering world-class application security services and products designed to help the enterprise secure their applications from the policies to production in this ever-changing security landscape. They're the makers of a product called Saltminer, which was the subject of today's show. It's an application security management platform designed by security professionals for security professionals. So Saltminer will actually aggregate and normalize the issues that are found by many different solutions you might be using when you're doing security testing, and it enriches that data and brings in the business context. Saltminer gives the team members, all from the executive level, your security teams, your development teams, gives you the ability to manage your application security program through customizable views. And this new announcement that was made recently about the Saltminer Community Edition, it provides your teams with custom reporting for potentially hundreds of end users, red team support, and the ability to manage new and retesting of your engagement. Saltminer Community Edition allows the teams to enforce both testing methodologies and custom vulnerability databases for consistency and engagement delivery. And if you scan that QR code that's on your screen right now, it'll take you to saltworks.io. You can check them out. You can find out more what they're about. But stay with us for this interview with the founder of Saltworks, Dennis Hust. And before we go to that, I want to say, if you've noticed back here, we've changed Agent 503 to Joey Ramone because we had a parody video on the Performance Tour called I Want to Run Containers, which was a remake of an old Ramone song. We actually filmed that video in the Saltworks building in Tennessee, and Dennis Hust is the founder of Saltworks. He's who I'm going to be interviewing today. He's actually a really good sport. He was in the video and he was a Ramone. Here's a picture of me with Dennis. There's me on the far left and Dennis is right next to me, which you'll see. So he was actually a Ramone for the video, and the video was done at their location. We will be doing more interviews and more filming at their location as well. And I'm proud to announce that they're one of our latest sponsors for the podcast for the remainder of the year. So expect to hear more about security and in the context of DevOps and how it relates to performance and tuning your applications, making them performant and secure. So without further ado, this is our interview with Dennis Hust of Saltworks Security. Hey, Dennis, welcome to the SMC Journal podcast today.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate you having me here.
Tell me about your company, Saltworks, and yourself.
So Saltworks is an application security consulting company. We help people build application security programs. So typically it's large organizations, lots of developers, all around the whole idea of shifting left in the development lifecycle. I've been a developer since high school, kind of started, my mom was a computer programming teacher, so sort of done it all my life. And got into application security specifically back in 2000 when I joined a company called Spy Dynamics to build one of the DAS scanners called WeaponsSpec. Mm-hmm. So I've been around development my whole life, and then application security since about 2000.
Cool. I mean, WeaponsSpec eventually became a product of Mercury and HP, now Micro Focus and OpenText, right?
Yes. It's on its fifth company now.
Great, because Micro Focus is one of our biggest sponsors. So shout out. So tell me about like some of the consulting stuff that you do around performance, because it's penetration testing and there's some other things that you do, right?
We do. So a lot of what we really focus on is building tooling into their DevOps pipelines. So there's all kinds of different scanners you use in our industry: static scanners, dynamic scanners, open source scanners, container scanners. There's lists. So we're helping them. So sort of the earliest thing in that DevOps lifecycle is helping them integrate those into their DevOps pipelines or their any build pipeline. And then we do other things like helping them understand their scans, helping them fix issues that get found. We also do pen testing as well. It's a part of our business, not a huge part, but it helps us to keep our skills very strong, I think is why we do it. So we do have a practice around pen testing as well.
Awesome. I know that back in March, you had a press release for a new product that you've got called Saltminer. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so actually, Saltminer has been around for about 3 years, and what Saltminer does is it's an aggregation and correlation tool for all those scanners I mentioned. So if you're a big company, you got all kinds of scanners, you're running lots of scans, you would like to have one central dashboard to look at all that stuff. So if you're a developer, you want one system you can go to understand, what do I have to go fix? So you want that single pane of glass. That's what Saltminer does. But one of the challenges we ran into is that there was no good way to track penetration testing results.
Okay.
Most people use spreadsheets and Word documents and PDFs, and it was just very tedious. It's been that way for decades. This is nothing new. So what we did is we integrated a full functioning penetration testing module into Saltminer. And then our announcement was that we've taken that plus the dashboarding minus the commercial tool support and sort of set that off as a product we call Saltminer Community. So that's free to use. A pen tester could go out, download it, use it for free. It's full multi-user, unlimited users. And our goal in that was pretty simple. One thing is it lets people that are doing pen tests take that data and give it to the people who use Saltminer, so our customers, in a very usable, reportable format. So that serves our customers. And then the other part of it is it serves our community as a whole. I mean, we've, being around the application security industry and the pen test industry that's a part of that, been around that for 20 years. Web Inspect was originally a pen testing tool primarily. So really as a service to our community. So it's kind of has two great benefits for us. One, it helps our customers. Plus it helps our pen test community with something they can use at no charge. These are usually small companies a lot of times. So it's nice for them to have something that's enterprise scalable, but not, going to break the bank.
One of the things that I wanted to do on this show, this podcast this year, is break out of just talking about performance testing or just performance engineering, get into a broader range of topics, including DevOps. And you brought out something, you've mentioned it a couple of times already, shifting everything left. You face the same issues with security as we would, my group of people that follow me on the performance side, of trying to shift left, getting the feedback early, getting into DevOps pipelines and all that stuff. And it has been a real battle on the performance side. And I look over across, we're kind of parallel. We're going down the same path.
Yeah.
And I look over and I'm wondering, are you struggling with the same things that we do when you're trying to shift left and get into those pipelines? And if so, what are those big struggles?
Yeah, so we do, and we kind of break the world into things that are integrated and things that are cadenced. So what I mean by that is integrated would be like a scan. You have a DevOps pipeline, it kicks off a scan, it runs a scan. That's an automated activity. Functional testing that you have automated can be part of that. There's going to be that you can run test scripts, and that's good. We want to do as much of that as you can. Very analogous to what we do in security, where there's certainly static and open source testing we can do, container security we can do, fully automated. When you get into dynamic testing, some of that can be automated, which is great. But then much like performance, you also hit a point where you're involving people. Somebody, you can configure the test, but still a person has to go make sure it works. And it's the further down that spectrum you go, and in our world, it's the dynamic testing down to pen testing, which would be kind of an analogy, I would think, to like sort of sanity check performance testing versus really thorough, hardcore performance testing where you're really monitoring. Very similar paths. So what we have to do is figure out what can we automate and automate everything you can. And then what kind of things I would call cadence based. So every 6 months you have to do this. Every 3 months you have to do this. A lot of times like performance, it's every major release. So maybe you don't go through a full 100% performance test on every minor release, but every major you do. We would typically say the same thing of pen testing.
Okay.
You're going to pen test at least on your majors and maybe some sanity check pen testing on minor releases. But it's almost mirror logic, honestly. I mean, it almost exactly one-to-one, I would think.
Of all the companies that you consult with, when we talk about how mature a company would be in shifting this stuff left and getting this early feedback, where do you see most companies at on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being like the most mature? Because on the performance side, there's a lot of talk, and it sounds easy to say, oh, we're going to make performance a continuous pipeline, and it's always going to be. But the number of companies that really are doing it are really a small number. Is it the same in security?
Yeah, if it were a wardrobe, most people would be wearing bell bottoms and polyester.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a great analogy, actually.
Yeah. Both, and it's very, I've never been into a large company that was pure DevOps. They're not pure anything. There are teams within those that are very highly skilled DevOps. And that's a problem we run into. So you go into it a lot, if it was a small organization and they said, we are DevOps, man, that's easy. That's no problem. As you go to something like a huge corporation where it's everything from DevOps to 1972 waterfall style, there's a huge spectrum in there. And what we have to do is figure out what must be done to go live or to run. What kind of testing is appropriate just for fundamental security, and then how do you do that within the context of everything from DevOps to traditional agile but not quite DevOps to waterfall. How do you integrate and where to make it scale? And that's a lot of the art of what we do, is figuring out how to do the right testing at the right time given the development process. Because one of the worst mistakes you can come in is try to make somebody change their dev process completely.
Oh yeah.
You have to be. It's the same thing with performance. You can't just come in and go, oh yeah, you got to do this every week. You're really going to have to be complementary to the release cycles and get the most value as you go through. Same thing for security.
I mean, the goal really is to make performance and all kinds of testing a continuous process, that it's always happening all the time, just at various levels, right? And that's what your goal is, right?
It is. It's like, with functional testing, we want to have as many functional test scripts as possible. With security testing, I want to do as much dynamic testing as I possibly can, as early as I can, but that requires good scripts. Performance testing I would say, is a little more like pen testing, where it's a little harder. You can do some things earlier, but you've got to figure out where you're going to use the big guns.
I see.
And to me, it comes down to, it's simple. Your two most important resources are time and money. They're both limited. So you've only got so much time and you only got so much money. Where are you going to spend it? And how are you going to get the most value for it? And I think that's, kind of the art of what you do and what we do, is figuring out where to spend that time and money to get the best value for a customer, even for a particular team. Given the way that they develop software, how can I bring the most value to them? And still, in your case, it's going to be, does the system function acceptably? In our case, it's going to be, is it reasonably secure?
Yeah, and so both of them, though, in both cases, you're trying to reduce risk, right? Ours is the risk of failure under load or resiliency. Yours is we're trying to keep you out of the newspaper and a big hack, and that. So it's reducing the risk. How can you reduce the most risk in the least amount of time with the amount of budget that you have, right? Because if you're like me, the engineer in you says you're never done testing. You will never be done testing. If you make one character change in the code, you got to redo everything. Just that's. But you can't. That's not feasible for most people. Kind of where I want to go with this is, I guess what frustrates me about the performance side is that our community really hasn't put this together in terms of like a basic building block. If somebody goes in, we have traditional performance test, like project-based work that we do, and we kind of know we're going to do step 1, step 2, step 3, how we get it done. But there's no like, here's the things that you need to address first at the feature and function level. Here's what you need to address in terms of architecture. Here's the things you need to worry about database. We don't really have that. It's people who learn from trial and error and get bit a bunch of times. But it seems like on the security side, at least you have something like OWASP. You have OWASP that comes out and says, here's some basic things that you need to be checking for in every application, especially if it's web-based. And here's the low-hanging fruit that you need to make sure that you've covered, and then go beyond that. Do you see something like that working for performance as well, like an OWASP equivalent?
I think so. The challenge even with OWASP though is that it's good. It's a good like a signpost. It points you in the right direction. This way, of people that I've known that had good AppSec programs, I don't know one of them that's failed a PCI audit for a valid reason. Now, there could have been some little gotcha because, some cryptography thing got upgraded and they didn't know it. And, there's little gotchas. But as far as like the programmatic effect of it, a good AppSec program will pass any OWASP by. It is good as a set of guideposts for us, though. It is very useful. So if somebody knows nothing or they're sitting down and they don't know a lot, it's going to be a good guidepost to get them in the right direction. For example, one of the things it talks about is descoping PCI, credit cards. So the theory of, if you have to take a credit card, if you can tokenize that thing really quickly, now it's not a credit card, now your security requirements lower for the rest of the system. That's a design principle. And the OWASP gives us guidance that says, hey, if you can do this pattern of tokenization, that will reduce your risk overall. So if developers read that and go, oh, I should do tokenization, that way I reduce my risk profile, that has given them a good pattern to follow that's generally going to work well. I think there's things, I think performance could use that as well if there were patterns that the industry gave. It might have to be technology based, but I'm sure there's things you see that just are bottlenecks every time.
Very common things depending on, like, we know that when people have shopping carts online, not everybody has a website with a shopping cart. Some aren't even HTTP based, but those who do, here's the things you need to watch out for when you got a shopping cart, or you're going to get bit performance wise. I'm sure, and I just wish we had more of that as a guidepost. And it seems like you security folks have that figured out, and we still haven't done that. I think we have relied more on the vendors to come forth with that. And then, of course, the vendor tends to make that slight towards their product offering that they're making instead of an industry-wide standard. And I think in the security realm, there's more of that, hey, this is standard across the board. Doesn't matter what tool you use. You got to fix this, Yeah,
and I think in development, there really could be that in performance because there are patterns that you can follow. I remember when I was learning Node.js, all over the Node.js documentation, it says, don't do blocking operations. And it talks a lot about why and how you do it and threading. And like from literally day one of learning how to do this, it was talking about that. Well, that's really just a good performance pattern.
Right.
Like you should not block calls, especially for long running calls. You should be asynchronous and let it go on. And like, that's a pattern that Node really just kind of formalized it in a direct way, but you can do it in .NET, and Java, Python. I mean, lots of ways to do that. But those are the kind of patterns I think if there was some general guidance that said, hey, these patterns work well. Do these patterns. And moreover, if they work well and they're secure. And I know when you talked to Ron, you talked about caching and people doing caching wrong, and that the performance issues that can, bad caching can mess up performance and bad caching can be bad on security. Well, if we could have consistent guidelines that say this pattern is both reasonably secure and highly performant in general, that'd be great.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what you said is really all comes back down to system design choices and how it's put together, and starting with that fundamentally. And I think that's a win. All right, so I feel like I've gone down a rabbit trail of performance and kind of drug you with me, but let's go back to like what you do, and especially like with Saltminer and managing all these tests. So if I'm a person who is interested in doing this and I want to get started, how do I get involved in the community and start using Saltminer?
The easiest way is just come out to our website, saltworks.io. And there's both products are linked there. There's Saltminer, which is the commercial product, and then Saltminer Community. And we'll fill out a form. Right now, you fill out a form, and we'll work with you on the download. We're doing a little more packaging and Dockerizing to make the download a little easier right now. So I expect within maybe a couple weeks, we should have it Dockerized to the point where we can make it much easier for people to get it and install it very easily. That's where we're heading. So.
This looks like a really cool tool. I'll make sure that we have all the links to this on the show notes, the video, and everything. I think more people need to know about this. And I think there really does need to be more of a conversation between the folks in performance and the folks in security, because I think there's so many parallels, and maybe we can talk about this on the performance tour in the future, where we can see what might work for one works for the other, because there's so many things that we have in common. And one final question that I do have for you is, if somebody, I know on my side, if somebody gets involved with performance, I know about how long it takes to learn the basics and to get to where you can become sort of a mid-level versus a senior level, and there's so much exposure you have to have. Same in security. How long does it take somebody to get through the basics to mid-level to senior? What's that growth pattern like?
Somebody can be, it's a weird curve. You can be a good security engineer 3 years, I would guess. You can be functional in about 6 months. Like you can do tactical acts. Like I need to run this. How do I run a scan? And you can learn enough of the different kinds of scans to be a highly functional member of the team, junior, but highly functional. The next step up from that is then reviewing results to say, are they real? Are they valid? So the tool found something. Does it apply to the environment that we're in? That's a little harder, because now you're having to put context around the issue.
Right.
And then to become an expert, if I ever become one, I'll let you know how long it takes.
Okay.
I mean,
I will say the same thing.
The world changes constantly.
Yeah.
Standing interview question I always tell people is, if you love to learn, this is a great industry. If you don't love to learn, please hang up the phone right now.
Yeah. And be prepared for an acronym every hour to, a new one.
Yeah. It's just constant. And with security, it's, you have to learn something and then figure out how to break it.
Yeah.
And then figure out how to harden it. So you really have to go pretty deep into the product to understand what's okay to turn on or off, or to configure or not configure. And if you love learning, it's a great industry, but it is a constant learning process.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Love you. Have you back anytime, Dennis, and we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
I was actually editing this interview, and I went back and rewatched the whole thing, and I was thinking, wow, that was a really good interview when we talk about comparing what the maturity levels of businesses and how the struggle is real for both sides, security and performance, and it all has to do with the maturity of the company that you're dealing with, especially when you're consulting around this stuff. I would watch this if I didn't do this show, and I think you would agree. This was a fantastic show. If you don't agree, then give me some feedback. It's pretty easy to reach me. I'm on most of the social media platforms. I'm basically really active on LinkedIn, but I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, and other places. That QR code will take you to my bio, where you can find out more information about how to get in touch with me. But you can also send me feedback through my email address, which is heyscott@smcjournal.com. Would love to hear from you. If you like this content, it would be great if you click the like button and subscribed to our YouTube channel. Lets us know that we're on the right track and you want to hear more from it, and we'll keep producing this kind of content for you. Until the next time that we meet on the podcast, this is Scott Moore thanking you again for watching the show, and we'll see you next time.